Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in again to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. Today's episode was inspired by a 6th grade kid that was part of the group I was responsible for at science camp this last week. Our guide was telling us about some of the native plants and had pointed out a couple that contain salicin and explained how these can be used as a natural painkiller and contain some of the same things used to make aspirin. And one of the kids asked, why would you use a plant when you can just go out and buy the medicine at a store? And it reminded me of how disconnected we've become from a more natural way of doing things. That we're pretty much programmed to reach for a overprocessed, manufactured remedy for just about everything, even though nature can provide most of this stuff for us. And honestly, for a long time, most of my life, I thought the same way. It wasn't really until I realized the stuff we're told we should use, really, the stuff that's shoved in our face every day through advertising, are just the things that turn a profit for someone. And the natural stuff that I used to think was just hippie talk is probably a much better option in most cases. So today, we're talking about all the health benefits of garlic and how you can take advantage of these with your chickens. And at the end, I'm going to answer a couple of listener questions I got this last week that I think are worth talking about. These were about a couple of my roosters and the mice I've been dealing with. So, if you've already started feeding garlic to your chickens, you probably know that, like anything, it should be done in moderation. It'd be pretty hard to feed them so much that it made them sick, but there can be too much of a good thing. A few cloves here and there, and we'll talk about the different ways that you can feed it to them. But there's no need to be giving them a ton of it, and while opinions may vary on this, I do believe that garlic can definitely be a great addition to your chicken's diet and help keep them healthy. I wouldn't try stuffing a sick chicken with it until they make some miraculous recovery from a serious illness. It just doesn't work that way. Look at it as just another way to help keep your chickens on a healthy diet, and it should help to prevent some of the different symptoms that we'll be talking about. So, what can garlic do for your chickens exactly? There's a study out of Clemson University that concluded chickens who eat garlic as part of their regular diet have poops that don't stink as bad. There's some obvious benefits to this, like a better smelling chicken coop, which results in less flies and the other things that like to hang around that stuff, all while having no effect on egg taste. I was a little skeptical of that, but I was reminded of a time I tried doing some research on if there was anything I could feed my chickens to actually make their eggs taste better, and really nothing came of that. Of course, chickens on a healthier overall diet are going to have a better tasting egg. We know that if we've had our own and we compare those to the ones we've gotten from the store. But outside of that, you're really not going to affect the egg's taste too much, and the garlic isn't going to have any negative effects. And if better smelling poop was the only benefit to using garlic, I'd still probably use it. I mean, that's a pretty good one. Beyond the poop, garlic can also help to boost their immune system by supercharging their white blood cells and making them far more effective at fighting off viruses. Compounds found in garlic can help to kill bacteria inside of a chicken's body and act as a very powerful antioxidant. Some people believe that this cleansing effect on the body also helps chickens to lay larger and better tasting eggs. There's no studies that can directly link garlic to this improved production, but it's hard to argue that chickens in optimal health would lay anything but the healthiest and best tasting eggs possible. Garlic is also believed to help chickens who aren't eating enough by adding a very strong flavor and aroma that they really seem to enjoy, and having many benefits to their digestive system, making it easier for them to digest their food and absorb all the nutrients in it. Improved respiratory health is another benefit your chickens are going to experience. Garlic is known to contain properties that help in clearing up respiratory passages, especially in the case of a chicken who's actually suffering from a respiratory infection. Garlic is even known to help keep chickens free of parasites like worms, lice, and mites. I didn't know this before doing some of this research on everything garlic is good for, and when I read that, I really wanted to know more. I mean, that's a bold statement since those parasites are some of the worst things that chickens and their keepers have to deal with. So I wanted to get a better understanding of exactly how this worked. What I found was that garlic contains a compound called allicin, which is formed when garlic cloves are crushed up or chopped. Allicin is known to have antimicrobial and antiparasitic effects, and it's believed to interfere with the metabolism of parasites, potentially damaging their ability to grow and reproduce. Even external parasites are believed to avoid chickens who've been regularly feeding on garlic because of the effect it has on their blood, making it less appealing for them to eat. And studies have shown that 9 out of 10 vampires would agree with this. And the same is true of internal parasites, who just seem to have a harder time thriving inside of a chicken who's been feeding on a lot of garlic. Now, if you're someone who raises chickens as part of a self-sufficient food source, it's pretty widely accepted that their meat actually tastes better when garlic is a part of their regular diet. I wouldn't have thought so, and there's nothing that led me to believe that the chicken would actually taste like garlic. I guess it's just a byproduct of them being healthier. Garlic also contains sulfur compounds that can add to those deworming properties. These compounds are known to be toxic to certain parasites, helping to eliminate them from a chicken's digestive tract. A few things I read even suggested that rubbing garlic oil, which really concentrates all the good stuff in the cloves, on a chicken's skin if it's suffering from a really significant infestation. I don't even need to know the science behind that to think that there's probably some truth to it. If I was getting covered in garlic oil, I would get out of that area as fast as I could. Not sure I'd try this in anything other than a really extreme case, but it is a good tool to keep in your back pocket. So outside of slathering our chickens in garlic oil, how exactly do we get them to eat that garlic? Well, the good news is that part should be easy, as they typically enjoy that really strong flavor. You can feed them garlic cloves raw. Simply provide whole or crushed up cloves to your chickens. They can peck at the cloves as they please. Just make sure that any whole cloves you do feed are free of mold or rot. That stuff can kind of start to hide down in the garlic cloves if it sits around for too long. You can crush up garlic cloves and steep them in water for a few hours. Remove the cloves and just give that water as you normally would. You can also mix in some apple cider vinegar to get some of the added benefits of that. I would just recommend kind of monitoring how much water they're taking in to make sure they're not avoiding that because of the taste. Usually when I give them water that has anything added to it, I also provide a bucket with fresh, clean water just to make sure they have an option and they're not avoiding it. A couple episodes back, we talked about healthy treats that you can make your chickens, and adding some chopped up garlic to any of those is sure to help. What I started doing was mixing it up with the scrambled eggs that I give them every week. I always add a pretty good dose of red pepper flakes to that, which can also help to fend off parasites. The combination of the garlic, the red pepper, and all the healthy benefits of those eggs is a really good snack to feed your chickens. You know, I used to wonder how they would eat the red pepper flakes, thinking that it would be too spicy for them, especially with how much I put in. I put a pretty good dose in when I scramble those eggs up for them. Turns out that chickens can't taste that kind of heat. I didn't know that until just recently. I mentioned garlic oil. That can be used as a dressing over some greens or mixed in with a little bit of their feed. Just use it sparingly as it is pretty potent and it's definitely not cheap. And if you really want to cut the cost of adding garlic to your chicken's menu, you can grow it on your own pretty easily. If you've got a green thumb, you probably don't need any help growing your own garlic cloves. But if you're like me and gardening just isn't something that comes natural and you still want to give it a try, here's a quick version of how to grow it on your own. Garlic prefers to grow in really well-drained soil with plenty of organic matter in it, and you want to choose a really sunny location for planting it, as garlic requires full sun for optimal growth. Before planting, you may need to amend the soil with some compost. Garlic grows best when the pH is between 6 and 7. Now, if checking soil pH and amending that isn't really your thing, you can buy some bagged soil to add to the ground to make this part easier. Then you take your garlic bulb and break it up into individual cloves, being careful to only use the ones that don't get damaged in this process. Plant each clove with the pointed end facing upward, about 2 inches deep and 6 inches apart. If you're planting a bunch of it, you want to space those rows about a foot apart from each other. Once you've got it planted, apply some sort of organic mulch like straw or chopped up leaves over the top. This is going to help keep the weeds down and regulate the soil temperature. And you want to keep that soil pretty moist, but not waterlogged. Especially when first getting started, garlic does require a consistent moisture level. And then as it grows, just try to keep that area free of weeds, as the competition for nutrients and water can affect the growth. The mulch should help with this, but if you check on your crop from time to time and see something sprouting through, just be sure to pull it out of there. And that's about it. It does take a while to grow, and if you start with cloves, you'll be waiting about 9 months before you can harvest. If you start with seeds, it could actually take a year longer than that. So, gonna have to be a little bit patient, and if you want to start using garlic before that, I guess you just start with some store-bought stuff. Okay, now on to those listener questions that I had mentioned. I know I said I usually just answer these direct, but there was a couple that I thought might be interesting to everybody. The first question stemmed from an Instagram reel I had posted a while back where I showed these two roosters that I have living together in one coop. Somebody had asked if I should really be keeping them together because it's kind of generally believed that really only one rooster should live with a flock. That's probably true, but these two guys were raised together since they were chicks, and I don't know if this is common, but these two guys just get along really well. They've got plenty of space in there, so nobody's getting cramped, and they've got multiple feeders and waters, so there's no need to fight over resources. The one thing that I kind of thought could be a problem is that they do share just 10 hens, and that's probably not enough. I am working on their run right now, trying to extend it and add quite a bit of space. Once that's done, I'm going to bring my other hens over that are living separate from them right now, and I'm hoping that with that, they'll continue to live just a happy life together. There should be plenty of girls to go around, and I really want to see this work out because I really like having those guys together. I have caught them in a fight, so I can't say that it's always been perfect, but it's only been a couple of times, at least that I've seen, and I've never noticed any sort of wounds, never looked like anybody was getting beat up. So as long as things continue to work out, I'm going to keep them together, and I guess I'm just lucky that they happen to get along. The other question I got was from Julia, and she wanted to know how it's going fighting off the mice and if I've found any good solutions. I mentioned a few weeks ago that I've been at war with these guys for a while, and unfortunately, I am losing that war. I'm realizing that even though I've made it so most of my feeders, they're not able to get into it, and I feel like I have them set up in a way that reduces the waste as much as possible, still always some feed that gets on the ground. And that's what the mice keep coming back for. I've actually watched this from inside of our barn before. I've got a couple of areas where chickens live in stalls and have access to the outside, but it makes it really easy to just kind of spy on them at night. It's crazy how acrobatic these mice are. I never realized they could jump so high, so it did take some work to raise those feeders up to make sure they couldn't get into them. But even that little bit of waste that gets on the ground, the mice are still coming for that. Where I used to have a problem finding poop inside the feeder, now I'm just finding that poop around the feeder. So I do have a plan for that, and my next move is taking those feeders that I think I've done a pretty good job of keeping the mice out of, and getting some kind of a pan underneath them to catch the little bit of waste that does come out. I'm going to have to make it so the mice can't jump up and get into that thing next, but I feel like that part of it I've kind of worked through pretty well. I just have to find a way to keep the feed off the ground. I don't know if I'll ever keep it all off, but the less food those mice can get to, the less likely they are to keep coming around, and hopefully they'll find another place to live. So that war rages on, and now that spring has rolled in, I'm also back to battling the blue jays. Those things are savage. I watched one the other day squeeze into the tiniest little hole that it had found to get into the chicken run and fly right towards the coop. It saw me, and I started heading that direction, so it headed back out, but I know it was going in there to peck at eggs, and I just don't want to do another summer of seeing those eggs getting torn up by blue jays every week. I'm going to have to take the fight to them here pretty soon. I ordered a couple of those fake owls that I hope will help. I've got little reflective mirrors or CDs hanging inside the run, but that doesn't seem to be deterring them as much as I thought. So, gonna have to figure something out. I don't want to have to break out the BB gun, but I will do what it takes to defend my chickens' eggs. I mean, they work hard to make them. I like collecting them, and I don't have a problem getting rid of mice if I have to. And at this point, I think I'm going to have to treat the blue jays the same way. We'll see. I'm also still in the market for a barn cat. I want to get one young so that I can teach it to not go into the chickens' areas. There's plenty of mice in the rest of the barn that they can feed on and hopefully keep that population down. Our house cat does a pretty good job. I'm still finding a couple of mice a week here and there that she leaves for me, but I do think I need another cat. All right, guys, gonna wrap it up. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.